Hello everyone, my name is Laura Thompson. Welcome to webinar 17, having a learning mindset. So let me have a think. Worked in the world of learning and development for 20 years now. So what is it that people might want this decade? I know, let me ask Alexa. Let's begin with the end in mind. Alexa, what will be the highest paid skills in a job profile in 2030? Alexa, what will be the highest paid skills in 2030?
I don't know that one.
Okay. Amazon is able to access every single bit of recorded, verbal and written information in the world. So if Amazon is unable to tell us what they think are going to be the highest paid skills in 2030, then maybe we're going to have to do this manually, having a consideration. So let me share the screen so we can begin. Welcome. So having a learning mindset. We'll explain a little bit more about the fox because we are going to get foxed up on this session. I thought this was a really inspiring quote. You are never too young to lead and you are never too old to learn. These sessions are designed to keep ourselves focused, flexible and empowered through this extraordinary time of transition in the way in which we work and lead our lives. The world of learning and development has evolved so much during the last decade with the shift, much more of the shift towards people taking personal accountability for their own learning. So back in the 2000s, when I started working as a trainer, as we were called then, head office selected this exclusive group of people that would then be put onto a series of courses and then tick, you were developed. But things were already rapidly changing as we saw out in 2019. And it really hurts when you have the realization during rapid change that some of your most prized skills might have been rendered irrelevant overnight. And it could be daunting then to find out our ways and our footing through times of disruption. The number of people I've been speaking to with whom, if you're the one person in the team that knows how to set up a Zoom invite, suddenly everyone around that team is asking you to set up a Zoom invite because they might have been finding it daunting. And if we have the same old thinking, then potentially we're going to get the same old results. And equally, it's delightful when we see how far we've come and how far we've developed without necessarily realising it. So tracking our own progression is good for us because it boosts our confidence, it sparks courage, and who knows who you might be secretly inspiring as you shift from maybe a bit of a stuck panda to an agile fox. And as we look towards 2030, this shift towards self-led learning is likely to continue with professional success determined by mindset, not by age or experience. So there's a lot going on. I need to make this work. What are we going to do? So this is a 30-minute lunch and learn designed to share some practical tips having a learning mindset. Great space to learn. Depending on your background, there might be some fresh ways of looking at some things that you've known for years. Keep the stuff that works for you, ditch the stuff that doesn't, share the stuff for things that you think might help others, and always rooted in commercial practice, which means, can I put this into practice like now? Is it actually something I can easily apply? The 3 objectives we're going to be focusing on are designed to help us thrive whilst in this period of flux, no matter how makeshift or temporary our current working situation. And the practical objectives we're going to cover today are the importance and benefit in the first place of having a learning mindset, frameworks for maximising learning uptake, recall and ability to transfer it, and some tips for getting into the learning habit. You might be quite into it yourself. How do you help friends and colleagues get into the learning habit too? And what is a personalised learning plan and how might I start it? So a gentle reminder from nature on surviving rapid change, because it doesn't matter how good I was on going training courses 2 years ago when everything might have been stable and easy to predict. It's the aptitude I have for learning whilst I'm in this period of rapid transformation. And borrowing the laws of nature that Charles Darwin laid down for us about how you don't have to be the fastest or the smartest of the species to survive through rapid change. As long as your rate of internal change matches the rate of external change, you are fit, relevant and catered for by your outside environment. And some animals are better than others at being able to do with that. Hence this fox panda mindset, which I'm going to riff on that theme in a bit. So why would it be useful to get myself into a learning mindset? Well, if you change nothing, then nothing has changed. And I thought it was a really inspiring quote here. Nobody can go back and have a new beginning, but all of us can start today and make a new ending. So here we are, 2020. Who could have predicted this? So we're all at the same start line together. Where could you take yourself? So ensuring your value during unpredictable times might be worthwhile embracing what I called a fox mindset. So don't be like a panda, increasingly stuck and stressed by the gap between where you are and where your environment's at. Get outside your walls and have a fox about. So thing about a panda, we love them. They're really cute. This was the BHS, the Woolworths of the high street. We can't imagine life without them. But actually the fitness for purpose that they had was a little bit based on yesterday than potentially the tomorrow. And the thing about a panda is that because its life is very local, it's got no idea what's going on beyond its own bamboo forest because it reaches for its food, it doesn't run for its food. So the sad thing that makes life a bit vulnerable for a panda, if there is some external change outside its control, is that it is the last to know that its ability to fend for itself is about to be jeopardized because all it can see is the immediate surround. So the thing about a panda is they're cute, but they're fixed and they're static. And at some point it takes more effort to conserve that species than be able to thrive for themselves. And it's almost where we kind of might get caged by the belief that age and experience are key criteria. I'm too old to get into that industry. I'm too young to get into that industry. My family don't do those types of jobs. My professional upbringing means that I can't do something like that. And actually we can sometimes find ourselves caging ourselves. Potentially then we're leaving our choice to chance, that at some point someone will say, hey you, how about you come and give this a go? Whereas a fox would have smelt environmental change the moment the diggers started to arrive. And even though it might have been raised in a hunting family, it would learn to pretty much overnight to learn how to forage again. It is flexible, dynamic and resilient by nature. Total ownership for self-development. Whether you love them or not, you've got to give the foxes respect for their ability to be resourceful in a constant state of adaptation, where age and experience are the platform upon which to build. You may be unusually young or old to enter in that industry, but all bets are off right now. So who are we to say that someone is right or wrong for a particular type of role, for example? It's all about the skill set. So ensuring our panda, and particularly through unpredictable times, by embracing a fox mindset. I asked a really well-respected, very successful chief technology officer a couple of years ago. I said, you've got teenage children. What would be some advice that you would pass on to anyone who's looking to keep their own professional skill set sharp and also as a role model maybe for their children? And he said, well, he works in the world of technology, the ability to handle change and the ability to learn are probably going to be the two skills that you can pretty much predict are going to be drawn upon in this next decade. So how do we get the best out of ourselves then? So the life-changing difference of a growth mindset, anyone here in the education world would have come across this, and selecting your self-perception, your theory that you have of yourself. Are you smart or are you not? Determined on how you perceive yourself. Who's putting yourself in the box here? And Carol Dweck was the first person that kind of coined this a number of years ago. And this idea of a fixed mindset. I was born this way and that's the way I'm made. So I'm this type of person and this is who I am. And it can be quite surprising when you realise just maybe how fixed you've made yourself. I remember sitting there in a lane in a go-kart circuit, dressed up in this go-kart outfit with a helmet. This is only 3 years ago, and thinking, I'm not the type of person that does things like this. I don't do go-karting. And I was absolutely petrified about doing this go-karting thing. And as I went the second time round the circuit, I thought, actually, maybe I am the type of person that does go-karting. Who was I to have written myself off for all of those years? And in that moment I saw, although intellectually I knew about this fixed versus growth mindset, I felt in that moment just, my goodness, the power of how we define ourselves, whether you're good or bad or something. And actually the growth mindset is I'm anyone I can choose to learn to be. So you'll see a few phrases there in terms of the difference between fixed and mindset. And it's to do with what I'm going to do next as opposed to where I've been before. So a fixed way of talking to someone might be what an intelligent student you are. Growth mindset language might be what a hard-working student you are. And there's some amazing research that you can find on the internet, which is the impact that then has on your resilience to give tough stuff a go. So if you were in the group that had been told what an intelligent student you are, suddenly I'm really worried about that intelligence bit of my identity getting jeopardised. So I'll sort of play it safe and do the easier questions because I don't want to not be intelligent. The group that are being told what a hard-working set of students you are, doesn't really matter whether I fail or win at the question because the identity of being hard-working will not be jeopardised. And actually, when they looked at, well, what is the impact in terms of type of praise on resilience, i.e. going for the tougher questions, those young people who'd been given effort praise, which is well done, I can see you worked hard, kept on giving stuff a go. Whereas the young people that had been told, well done, you're really intelligent, actually bottled it and then didn't want to be left vulnerable, feeling that they weren't intelligent anymore. So it can be life-changing when you suddenly realise, well, how am I praising myself and how am I talking with myself? What's interesting is when you transfer that from the world of children to adults. And actually with adults, it's a little bit different because being foxy as an adult requires you to be your own retrospective teacher and coach, depending on how you were raised and schooled, has already influenced your default inner voice. So as an adult, we're sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, how could I ever kind of, do X, Y, Z? And there might be some thought process going through our mind. This is too hard, too much. I'll never crack it. And actually, even us adults can get into this fixed versus growth mindset, even though we know better. So we may have to retrain the way that we approach ourselves with language like, this might take some time, who can I learn from to speed up? So instead of some of this fixed growth feedback we might give ourselves, getting a few more of these types of what can I do next, growth mindset feedback instead. But I thought that was really interesting in that it's going to take more effort as an adult to learn a new way of learning than potentially when you're a younger child. Why is that? Because you've already been educated and schooled and raised to think about yourself and learning in a particular way. But we can do it. So why would it be useful to get myself into a learning mindset? Well, we can all have a new day one where we start to think about where we're going to take myself. I think the start of a new decade is an ideal time, and given what's going on at the moment, no one's got a grand plan to crack the next decade. So who are we to not then think that we're capable? Ensuring your value during unpredictable times by embracing a fox mindset, the life-changing difference that having a growth mindset can have, i.e. it all starts with your self-identity. I can be whoever I want to be, and being foxy as an adult will require us to be our own very conscious, purposeful best teacher and coach, depending on your background and how you were kind of schooled and educated. So the second thing we're going to move on to is, well, how do I maximise my learning uptake, recall, and ability to transfer it? I love this phrase, stay humble, remain hungry, stay hungry, remain humble. And from Tom Hiddleston, the actor, above all, stay humble, because just when you think you've got all the answers is the moment when some bitter twist of fate in the universe will remind you that you very much don't. So how do I then ensure that my brain is as open as possible? Because you never quite know when you might need to redeem that learning. So here we go. To learn something new, number one, you've got to get into learner mode and prepare for it to feel a little bit uncomfortable. You can set yourself a period of time maybe to scan the net to catch something new, because actually the first stage of the learning cycle, as first quoted by Martin Broadwell in 1969, is the unconscious incompetence part, which is I don't quite know what I don't know yet. It's really tricky to Google search something that you don't know the question to yet. So the first part is maybe just to relax the net and just get curious, get really nosy and just have a sniff around and see what might be going on to catch something new within your net. I remember making a decision a number of years ago. It would be useful maybe to go to a CIPD business conference to find out what's been going on and stuff. But actually, if you want to really find out what's going on in technology, you snoop in at some of the very amateur meetups. That's where you find what's going to become the formal stuff in 2 years' time. So it's unconscious incompetence, going as much to the raw happening as possible. So how can I get a little bit nosy? What can I find out about? So then have a think about, okay, well, now I know what I don't know. So now I can start to create a plan. The conscious competence bit is I now know what it is that I need to know, but I have to think about it. And then the unconscious competence is I just now know it. Interesting for anyone here that is a seasoned driver. I've been driving for years. I'm finding myself, and I have got back into the car, having to think mirror signal manoeuvre as I arrive at a roundabout, because quite quickly my innate skill and confidence at driving, something I've been doing for 20 odd years, actually has started to decay a little bit. So that regular routine and practice. The main point I wanted to make here though is this is not a comfortable process. Otherwise you wouldn't be learning. So it opens up our brain and we have to feel a little bit vulnerable to then be able to fully absorb stuff. It also might be impacted by your own learning preference. So how are you going to work with yourself in the best possible way? A list of Lego instructions fills me with dread and others with joy. Some of us love a lot of instructions, for others it is just too much. And to say to myself, well, I'll just do something on a whim, might really work for you, but it might not for someone else. And this 4 learning styles put together by Honey and Mumford a number of years ago. If you imagine this is the mountain to climb, and what I mean by mountain, that represents the new skill that you want to climb. Let's say that is getting confident and capable in the invite to delivery process of using Zoom. So that's quite a mountain, depending on your previous experience so far. Some of us will be activists. Too much sitting about it and talking about it builds the fear, because we just need to do it in order to learn. So give it a go when you get the whim, and just do it in quite a scratch learning process. For other people, they'll be horrified at the lack of planning behind that, because actually they want to watch someone else do it first of all. So a pragmatist has quite a practical approach to learning. So get yourself on YouTube, create your own course, and watching others is a way that the pragmatist types of learners quite enjoy that. A theorist might want to understand all the whys and wherefores beforehand. So get yourself a brand new book, make it a journaled project, and make it as a formal undertaking, because a theorist quite likes that, to be able to build their own Wikipedia of where their knowledge sits. And a reflector needs a bit of time to think on it. So setting aside some time to think, what are the things that I need to learn or I want to learn in terms of using Zoom, for example, and what's my plan going to be? So you can reflect and not feel like you're in an urgent state of mind, so that might not work for your brain. For some of us, that urgent learning energizes. For others, it just overwhelms, and that's okay. It's first of all thinking, well, what do I think my learning preference might be? Because some of us love a lot of instructions, and some of us loved school, and for others, the thought of learning again actually can trigger some emotions that can get in the way. But you're an adult now, so you get to choose what might be some ways that you would look forward to doing some learning. And the third thing maybe to have a think about is turning it from something that's sort of a bit random, because life is full of distractions. How can I turn it from something random to something intentional, with the desire then to be able to actually use this in real life, so to be able to transfer it? And even just 15 minutes a day, a bit of concerted effort. Maybe this could be the new working week, depending on what your what's going on in your life right now, and turning it from random to intentional. And this is something that I've borrowed from the army. So the Edict approach is just such a handy little way to turn it from just 15 minutes random thinking into something that has actually got a bit of format behind it. And the army use this as an on-the-job tool to be able to train, acquire and put into practice skills on the go in a really live, dynamic, practical way. And the E stands for explain. So this taps into that theorist part of the learning preference, which is, well, why is this topic important to me? What that does is it gets your brain in the game, thinking, okay, it's really important for me to learn about handling tricky conversations over the screen, because that's important to me, because I want to do it well, and it might be a big part of your role. Okay, so then let's do the demonstrate bit, which is the pragmatist kind of learning preference, which is let me find out some research about some specific best practice or worst practice examples. So let me get myself a little catalogue of what might be some good ways to approach tricky conversations and what might be some things I definitely want to avoid. So that's kind of what's out there. And then the imitate bit, which is the activist sort of bit, which is, okay, so what do I need to do here? What might need to be adjusted or added to make this really relevant to me and my particular requirements? And then the practical, the P bit, is the practice, set the parameters for action and follow-up, and that feeds into the reflector's desire to have a bit of time and space to be able to actually put something in. So you could set an alarm and do like a 9 till 9:15 conscious little learning session with yourself, and then you could set yourself a loose parameter for the rest of the day to have it drifting around your mind, chance to put a bit of practice in, and then you can then reflect the next day. And I think the point I wanted to make here is this doesn't have to be anything huge and formal. All learning is a formula to your thinking that at some point you can then put it into tangible action. So As Confucius said, I hear and I forget, I see and I remember, I do and I understand, I do all of those things, it's more likely to get stuck in my brain. So how do I maximise my learning uptake, recall, ability to transfer it? So to learn something new, I need to prepare to get into learner mode and prepare to feel unexpert. And that's trickier the more experience we've acquired under our belt. Appreciate your own learning preference and work with yourself. Why set yourself up to be bored or stressed? Why do that? You're in charge of your own brain now. We're lucky enough to be an adult now. We can now get to choose how we're going to work with ourselves and turn it from random to intentional learning, even with just 15 minutes a day, with that really cool little tool from the army, which is the Edict bit, which is how we can learn on the go. So the third objective is thinking, well, how do I get into the learning habit and create a personalised learning plan? And I loved this. A year from now, you'll wish you had started today. And I just think, we're midway through a brand new year, a brand new decade. If there's not a best time to start to do something new, then this is the year to do it. And how we learn has changed over time. The ability to access knowledge is no longer exclusive. One of the things that I picked up when I first started really getting interested in the impact that technology was having on life at work and the skills we need to acquire is there are more people now who've got an MBA from Harvard Business School in the 3 years since they turned that into an online MBA program than in the 377 years that university has been open. I now longer don't need to put my life on hold for 2 years, travel over to another part of the world, to sit in a room to be able to learn that. That's only quite an exclusive set of people that are able to either have the finance or the freedom to be able to do that. Now that level of quality content can be accessed online is no longer such an exclusive club. The internet has changed everything. And I think that's such an exciting time to be alive, because no longer do I have to have the tap on the shoulder to be invited to an exclusive club of people that can find something out. I could be sitting at my desk and I could be writing some notes and doing me Edict there with Google at my fingertips to be able to access all of the world's written, recorded, stored data. The internet has changed everything. So actually, when you start to think of it, this is something we've been using in the world work for a while, which is 70% of learning and development, 70% of the learning that we acquire for handling that tricky conversation might have actually been learned on the job, from me absorbing over the years how I've seen other people do it and just having a feeling in terms of the little bits, mini parts of that task that I might have done. I might not have done a full return to work interview before, but I've certainly asked questions and listened to responses. So I'm able to patch that together to put together a bit of an idea as to how I might try the first one. I've learned formally through others. Maybe I've asked a bit of advice or how I felt when I've been on the other side. And then the formal learning is maybe I've read a book, put myself on a course, or had a handout that I've picked up. So actually much less of our how we learn new stuff comes from sitting on a formal training course. So for anyone that is thinking, well, how can I develop myself because I'm currently out of work, then actually there's limited amount of impact that a formal learning course that an employer will put someone through actually has anyway. So we don't need to wait to get in a situation where we can go on a learning and development program to actually start learning. And in fact, this is Max Verstappen, who was a Formula One driver. And I was at a talk the other year where there was the head of data for Formula One talking about the game-changing individual that Max Verstappen has been. Because you see, leading up to someone like a Max coming along, in order to access that world of Formula One driving and to be able to access and practice those skills, you had to live quite a privileged childhood. You had to be taken to certain places and a certain amount of financial money before sponsorship comes to get into that world. What made Max Verstappen quite different is, regardless of his background, he practiced on a Nintendo. So he practiced in a digital gaming environment that then meant by the time he actually got his hands behind the wheel, he was already considered an expert driver. And what this chap was saying was that this was a bit of a game changer, really, because there was new talent joining the circuit who hadn't come up through the typical ranks. They'd learned in a digital gaming environment. Wow. And that is in a life-changing, life or death set of situations where you're hurtling around a track at, you know, however many miles per hour. Just think, what could I start to learn in a simulated environment? That means when I'm then live, actually the veracity, so how real it is that I can transfer it across. We're seeing much more exciting ways to approach learning. So the second thing maybe is, all right, well, let me get a bit organised. So what might a personalised learning plan look like? And nothing complicated, just whatever you think is going to be a way to help you track and increase your metacognition. Let's focus on this little fancy phrase for a moment, metacognition, which is basically thinking about your thinking. What's the benefit of that? You can extract out the stuff that doesn't work for you, and you can do more of the stuff that does work for you. It's things like, does music help me concentrate or does it hinder? I've learned over the years, if I'm working, I cannot listen to music with lyrics in because it disturbs my own internal soundtrack. But it really helps me to have music because it means that I don't get distracted by various random noises might be outside. That's required me to have some metacognition, which is, let me think about my thinking, so I can make some conscious choices to be able to get more return on my time investment when I'm thinking about something. And metacognition is basically a real kind of closed loop system, really, of assessing what is I'm about to do, what's the type of thinking that I need, how am I going to approach that, what am I going to try, and then reflecting. Was I better or worse as a result of me thinking in that particular way? And if we were to just flip the Kirkpatrick 4 levels of training evaluation for a little bit, and I love the whole Kirkpatrick evaluation bit, which is basically, how do you know a training course has made impact? Well, what he said X amount of years ago is, what's the reaction you want people to think or feel? So let's say you're putting together a personalised learning plan. You're thinking, yeah, I think there's probably some things that I'd like to get a little bit foxier on. So what is it you want to think and feel about this learning? What is it you want to learn or unlearn? What do I actually want to transfer and implement into real life? So this is the level 3, he would call it, behaviour. And for what aim? So what's the ultimate effect do I want to create, and with what benefit? And it may just be for joy. It may be to keep your brain fresh. It may be with a specific tangible outcome that links to some kind of professional impact, or maybe just because. One of the reasons why I wanted to first get into learning and development back in 1999, I think, when I was first thinking about it, is I started to notice something. People involved in the world of learning look younger. And there's just something about that learning mindset. I'm forever surprised when I find out how old people are when they're in the world of learning. You think, really? God, they look good for their age. Why do they look good for their age? Because we're all using different water and different toiletries. Is because there's something about learning that keeps you youthful, because you're forever feeling optimistic that there's going to be a tomorrow, and there's going to be a tomorrow where actually you're going to be continuously improved. So a personalised learning plan suddenly starts to mean that the days count. And when the days count, you tend to track your time and increase your level of accountability and fun and energy. So the third thing is, how do I get started? Who knows where you could take yourself? Now, when I put a search into my internal file system of sample personal development plans or sample personalised learning plans, so much stuff came up. I thought, do you know what? Who am I to tell anyone what to do? Do a Google search. There's 7,870,000 results for sample PDP. PDP stands for Personal Development Plan. I've called it a personalised learning plan because you might not have any goal for this personalised learning plan other just than the joy of learning. But look, there's so much stuff out there. You know, there's more than any one book could tell you with it, but it's some kind of plan. So if you haven't done one before, or if the version you got is stuck in some office somewhere that you're unable to go back into, then there's so much stuff there. You know, there's nearly 8 million articles linked to a personal development plan. So here are just some 4 steps to get yourself started. Think back to a previous time when you've started something new and it went well. What were the steps you took? Do them and just do it. So copy them and do it, because you'll know that when you're in mode and you get stuff done, that might be quite a unique set of circumstances. Maybe you need to sit and worry about it for 3 weeks, and then finally you get so annoyed with yourself for not having done it that you smash out in one Sunday evening a whole project that might take you a tiny amount of time. Maybe you're someone who is quite a formula process type of person, and actually you don't need so much pressure to be able to focus. The joy of having time kind of allocated in a plan might be for you what sort of gets you into mode. It's about getting started, and there's so many examples out there that you can have, whatever kind of works for you. So how do I get into the learning habit and create a personalised learning plan? How we learn has changed over time. Access to knowledge is no longer exclusive. The internet has democratised learning. There's so much stuff out there. The key is to organise it in some way, and that's the benefit of having a personalised learning plan. It turns it from 8 million articles into the 8 that are actually relevant for you, and that requires your brain to be able to sift that through. And getting started, who knows where you could take yourself. Think back to a previous time where you've been really on it, and then follow those steps as much as possible, and then just do it, because there's no one else in the world like you. You are unique. So with so much flux in the employment landscape, fortune is going to favour those foxes who take ownership of their own learning and development. What an ideal time for a fresh start for anyone who's either looking for or needs a change, or a wake-up call for those of us who are so busy to realise it had been ages since you invested in your own personal development. Being able to have a learning mindset, which is joy derived from the process itself rather than necessarily outcome, regardless of how old you are or how much experience you do or don't have, is useful now and is a forever skill. New mindset, new results. It's likely to be the most transformational decade of our working lives. The success manual hasn't been written yet, so we all have our L plates on. And it's testing us in new ways for which there was no training course written for this, even just 4 months ago. So here we go, Stonehenge, been here for years. Just think how much learning and development and stuff that's been written and recorded and lost and learned again in the 5,000 years that these have been standing. How am I going to get myself into a learning mindset for this decade ahead? Handling change, ability to learn are probably the 2 skills that we can predict will be drawn upon in the year 2030. What can I do to get my brain in gear, to uptake, recall and apply this new knowledge? And when will I start the ball rolling and create my personalised learning plan? So my name's Laura. It's been a pleasure to see you at this webinar. Keep human, stay foxy. See you at the next one.